What's up YouTube, Honeybee here, bringing you a new Mortal Kombat 11 patch update video. And in this video we're going to be going over both Noob Saibot and Cassie Cage's changes that happened in this most recent patch. We're going to start with Noob Saibot. The first thing that we're going to see is that his Shadow Tackle amplified damage has increased by 40, meaning his back forward 2, which is this move, when you amplify it, it does more damage. 14%. Before was about like 10 to 11%, so it's like 3 to 4% more damage now. Regular is about 10% for without the amplify, and then if you amplify it, you're gonna get a solid extra 4% damage now when you amplify the Shadow Tackle. So that makes it quite a bit better. For example, if you get them with something like this now, there's actually a point in amplifying and getting about 22.5% off of his 4221. So it's a pretty nice change. He gets a little bit more damage, and there's a point to actually amplifying this move, because before there really wasn't much of a point since the damage output was so small. It was only about an extra 1%. So another change that he got, actually a lot of the other changes he got were in his seeing double variation, so we're gonna go over that. But I just want to show the only other thing that's affected in this variation, the Dark Sabbath variation. His it says his boot slide, down and front kick, which is his down 3 attack. I'll have the patch notes in the description, by the way, so feel free to go there to follow along. It says his down 3 has 2 more frames of recovery on hit/miss and 4 more frames of hit stun. So it looks like it recovers a little bit slower than it used to, but it still recovers really quickly. It's only 15 frames of recovery, so I believe that means it used to be 13 frames of recovery. So he recovers a little bit slower now than he used to, but it's still a very strong move. Still has 12 frames of hit advantage, and the move itself seems very strong overall anyways. The other change that happened is to his down 4, which is his sickle strike. It says it has 2 more frames of recovery, 2 less frames of hit stun, and had its hit region adjusted. Now the hit region adjusted is probably the biggest change, and it's actually a pretty nice buff. I'll show you why. But as far as the recovery, this just takes a little bit longer to recover, and he's a little bit less advantageous when it hits you with it. But it's still a very strong move, still 9 frame startup. And it's a -7 on block. It used to be -5 on block, so it's a slightly more negative on block. But the hit region being adjusted is a pretty big deal. If we set Cassie to jump kick in, we'll see that he can actually down 4 anti-air pretty consistently when it comes to like stopping her jump-ins. Now this is pretty good, because before his other options were like he could down 2, but sometimes if you react a little bit late, you're going to get hit like that. His down back 4 is a super consistent anti-air anyways, but then he also has like a stand 1 that sometimes works, but it's not super consistent. Sometimes he'll get hit out. His down 1 sometimes could in certain situations, but it wasn't consistent either. But now his down 4 is like very consistent. He also has a forward 3 that you can use, but it's kind of risky to use as an anti-air, honestly. It's a little bit risky since it's kind of slowish, and you have to do it a little bit preemptively, or you have to do it very quick to actually hit people. But the down 4 now as an anti-air, I feel is going to be very consistent to use, and you can actually down 4 and get like a full combo if you follow up with a back 1, 1+3. You can do something such as this. You can actually get even more damage if you follow up with a 1-1-3. You just have to make sure you hit it correctly, like that. And then if you do that, you can do a standard combo like this and get a 35% off of the down 4 anti-air. So that's actually very strong. Also, if you're further away, you can always do something like down 4 into Shadow Tackle, and now that Shadow Tackle has more damage on the amplify, it's actually worth doing. You can get a nice 16.5% for that, which is pretty strong. And you can also do down 4 up tackle. It's going to be more useful in the seeing double variation most likely, since you can actually build your shadows, but we'll go over that later. But essentially those are the changes to the Dark Sabbath variation. Just a much more reliable anti-air with his down 4, and a little bit of a damage buff with his amplified shadow tackle. This is a little bit less crazy when it comes to just machine gunning it in neutral. It's not going to be as good, but it still seems very strong. And then this is also a little bit more negative. So those are the only changes to Dark Saibot. Now, if we look at the Seeing Double variation, this is where he got a couple different buffs that's actually going to change his game plan quite a bit. The first one is that Shadow Slide now has one more recovery frame, travel speed slightly reduced, and can now be amplified. So Shadow Slide is back forward 3. It has one more recovery frame. So it says it recovers in 24 frames. Maybe it used to be 23, I guess. I never really used this variation, so I'm not 100% certain, but that's what the frame data leads me to believe. Anyways, he also, it goes a little bit slower across the screen, according to the patch notes. As you can see, this is not a full screen attack. It essentially goes about half screen. So it's something that you can kind of use to zone out your opponents from like here. But yeah, he has that in this variation, and he can also amplify it. And when you amplify it, it'll send out another clone, and then that clone will go high. Now, if they do block the low, you can't duck the high. The high will hit. I'll just show that real quick. So if I duck this, or if I block this, I mean, if I try to release, the high will still hit. So that's an important thing to note, is as long as you're blocking that, you can amplify that and be safe. So that's going to be a really important thing when it comes to some Seeing Double, like new pressure options that he might have, or ways of stealing back his turn. Another thing that changed is his Ghost Ball. Recovery reduced by 14 frames. So his Ghost Ball, I think it's probably still not a very good move, to be honest. I think maybe I can put on frame data here. If I do the Ghost Ball, it doesn't really list like the recovery, but you can definitely tell that he does recover quicker, 14 frames quicker than he used to from this. The way the Ghost Ball works, for those of you that don't know, is it is an unblockable attack that takes away both a bar of offensive and defensive meter, but it's a high unblockable. So all you have to do is duck it. I don't believe there's any way to actually really use this in guaranteed setups, potentially in the corner, but it might not even be worth it. I have to look into that further, but generally speaking, this isn't a very good move, mainly because it's very slow startup, 42 frames startup, and it's very, very easy to see coming. So you can just duck it, and then sometimes opponents can even duck it and just come in and punish him for it. So like, it's still punishable, like from certain ranges. You don't want to be using this too close to your opponent, because they can just duck and then come in and punish you for it, as you can see here. But it's a little bit quicker to recover, and it might have its uses. Let's go back to his back forward 3. Now the back forward 3, this buff is actually very, very important for quite a few reasons. The first one being that now that he has an amplified version of this, he can get more damage. For example, he can do something like that and get 24.5%, 24 to 25%, however you want to look at it. And not only does he get more damage, it also stacks his clones quicker. So for those of you that know anything about Noob Saibot, he has a Shadow Tackle Amplify Crushing Blow, which triggers if you connect at least 10 Shadow special moves within the match. Now before, this was essentially like not possible unless you're playing someone really bad that just keeps getting hit by these things. But now that he can actually amplify, and that counts as 2 attacks, now it's actually quite possible for him to hit people with it, because he can do it at the end of combos like this, and all of a sudden you have 2 clones stacked up, and if you hit them again with this, now you have 4 clones stacked up all of a sudden, and it starts adding up really quickly all of a sudden for him. He can also do stuff like this, down 3, and if the opponent tries to poke, then they could get hit, and then all of a sudden you just stacked up 2 clones. So it can be pretty useful in situations like that, and he can also use it. Part of like what's really great about this is he can use it to be safe when he amplifies, since it's -8. So for example, Noob Saibot can do something like, let me show you. He can do something like this, and if I try to come in afterwards, see how I'm getting hit by trying to take my turn. Now it's not a true thing to do the shadow tackle, since it takes a little bit of time to come out. As you can see, this is a 10 frame move that if I reversal, it would actually punish him for trying to get that out. So if I'm quick enough, I'm pretty sure like a 9 framer can actually stop him as long as it's close enough, or a 10 framer would trade. Since this is a special move though, it comes out a frame faster, so this will actually stop that entirely. If I try to down 1 or something like that from this range, the thing is, the down 3 has quite a bit of pushback, so a lot of characters probably won't be able to interrupt this, and they can actually just hold that, and then they'll either get hit, or they'll just be -8 with pushback, so you'll be safe. There is a way to get past this though, which is actually short hopping. As you can see, if you short hop, you can actually punish him for it. You don't even have to short hop, you could jump over as well, which is another option. So there's ways through it, but then there becomes a little bit of a mind game where maybe he'll do a down 3 into the clone, and if you try to short hop, now you're going to get hit by that. Or he could do a down 3, and if he catches you trying to jump at him or something, he'll just down 3 your ass. So it's nice that he has the option now to do that. But there is a way around that. He could also end the special moves or strings that are safe in that now that maybe he wouldn't really want to before, because before it would be punishable. So for example, he can do something like 4-2-2-1 into this, and I don't believe you can actually jump out of this. No, you can't. So if you try to jump out of this, you'll get hit. I don't believe there's a gap big enough to actually get out. Yeah, I don't think you can actually do anything about this besides block. So he can actually end strings in this move, and it could be a little bit of a mix-up whether or not he's actually going to go for it or not, because even if you do block it, he's only -8. So he can actually like potentially steal turns back in a safe way. He can do this off of other strings as well, such as 2-1-2. Because before, like, what you'd have to do is 2-1-2 into shadow tackle if you want to take a turn, but that's very punishable if they were to block it. But now you can do 2-1-2 into slide and then amplify it, and then if someone's like blocking that and then they're trying to take their turn, and suddenly he's built to 2 clones. So that's actually a pretty big deal. And as you can see, if I'm trying to get through it, I can't get through that. I can't jump out of that. Like, that's pretty much guaranteed. So that's a pretty big deal, I think, for Noob Saibot in the seeing double variation. The fact that he can kind of take a turn back like that, I think that's a pretty nice change for him. Another thing that changes, his damage potential right now is way better, especially when it comes to the corner as well. He can do something like 1-1-3 into this, and he can actually get a full combo. For example, something like that would be 38%. He doesn't actually have to spend an extra bar to get good damage though. He could do something like this and get like 37% almost without having to spend any additional resources. You could spend 2 of these to get 40% and build 2 stacks of your clone. Essentially, if you ever have them in the corner, you can always guarantee yourself, that's 37%. You can always guarantee yourself 3 clone stacks whenever you hit them in the corner with this move, which is pretty good. Like, if you hit them in the corner with 1-1-3, you can just go into this and you can make sure you get, that's just 3 clone stacks right there. So that's really good. You can also hit them with something like this, and then do a combo like that if you want to get 3 clone stacks as well, or you can just do something that would be kind of standard and a combo like that, and then you have 2 clone stacks. But there's a possibility now of getting 4 stacks in the corner, which is pretty good. That's pretty good in my opinion. He can definitely build his crushing blow reliably now, and if he does build it, he can do some like pretty good damage. So like that, he gets like 46% if he does have the crushing blow loaded and he has them in the corner. If he has the crushing blow loaded and he hits them mid-screen, he can get like 37%, which is pretty strong as well. And this is something that you will most likely be seeing from seeing double, since the crushing blow is certainly possible to hit now. So overall, nice changes. He also does get a little bit of a mix-up now. It's not a real mix-up, but it is a mix-up with the shadow slide. Shadow slide comes out in it's a low, and it's comes out in 18 frames, whereas his 1-1-2 string comes out in 26 frames. So you can, there's a little bit of a mix-up whether or not he'll do 1-1-2 on block, which is overhead, or 1-1 slide. Now the interesting thing is that if you do 1-1 slide and it hits in the corner, you'll see that the amplified portion will not connect. As you can see, the amplified portion will not connect if you hit them with the 1-1. But that doesn't mean that there's not a mix-up, because what happens actually is that if your opponent is blocking the first 2 hits and they're ready to block the overhead, they would be sand blocking. If they get hit by just the last hit, you actually can get a full combo. So there is a mix-up in the corner that will lead into a full combo, and it's a safe mix-up using that slide. So that's a pretty big deal that he can get like 30%, stack 2 clones, and get a safe mix-up in the corner. Now, as I said before, it's not a real mix-up because the low comes out 8 frames quicker than the high, so you could just fuzzy block it. But it is something to note that you could potentially throw people off by mixing in the 1-1 into the overhead, the 1-1-2, or you can mix up the 1-1 into the slide. The last thing I wanted to mention is actually about the Ghost Ball. I forgot to mention that they adjusted the stamina regeneration after Ghost Ball debuff expires. So if you do hit someone with this, before their stamina would come back very, very quickly. It's essentially doing nothing. But now, as you can see, if you hit them with this, their stamina regeneration does take quite a bit longer. He also is actually, if you do hit them with this, he has 8 frames of hit advantage, whereas previously I believe he was actually negative on hit if you were to hit someone with this. So if you do something, for example, let's say you do a combo that ends like this, and you get them with that reset. Now this is not real at all. They could duck and punish you, but if you were to hit them with something like this, you're actually plus now. You're plus 8, so you could do something, and if you hit them, you could be plus 8, and then you could follow up. And this whole time they don't have the ability to break away. So if you hit them, for example, with something like this, and you go into this, they don't have the option to break out of that because they don't have the stamina. So he does potentially have some use for that. It could be more useful in the corner, because in the corner you could actually get some like big damage. If you were to hit them with this and then you go for the 2-1-2 and you hit them, now you can do a whole combo like this and they can't break away from it because they don't have the stamina anymore. So it could work, but I just feel like against a strong player, they should be ready for this and they can full combo punish you. I'll just show you what that would look like. So I'm trying to block right now. So if I get hit by this and I see he's starting up that, you can just get a full combo, no problem. So it is going to be a risky thing to do. I don't know if I would really advise doing that, but you know, it's an option. Alright, now that we finished going over Noob Saibot, let's take a look at Cassie Cage. There's a couple stuff that changed for her, but not a whole lot. The first thing to take note of is that her health is now 950, down from 1,000, meaning she has 5% less health now, right from the start of the match. They did this change for a couple different characters. Cassie's one of them. So now she has a little bit of a disadvantage right from the start of the match because she has 5% less health. It's nothing too big, but you know, it may or may not play a factor in some matches. So it says Ball Buster has an increased victim region during its active frames. So the best way to demonstrate what this means is essentially it means that her hurt box was increased from what it used to be on this. Before, she could use this move to get through a lot of other moves, such as Sonya's amplified ring. But I'll show you right now that it doesn't work anymore. If she does something like this and then she does the ring and amplifies it, I'm gonna try to go under it like I could before, but you'll see that she gets hit now. So that's the change that they did for that. It's definitely like a fair change. It was kind of busted what she was able to do before by just going under things using this. So now she can get hit out of it, as she probably should. So that's a good change that they had for Cassie. They also changed her up low kick. Now has 5 less frames of block stun, so that's her back forward 4 here. 5 less frames of block stun and can no longer be amplified after being flawless blocked. Now, I'm not sure if that really matters that much regarding whether or not it can be amplified after being flawless blocked, because normally people aren't even just doing this raw. Usually they're doing it in situations that you couldn't flawless block anyways, such as after a 1-1-1 on block. If we set the AI to block, usually you would do it in a situation like that, for example. If I set the AI to flawless block, you'll see that there's no option to flawless block at the beginning anyways. Or if I do it off of something like this, there's no option to flawless block at the beginning of this anyways. So it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, the fact that she can't finish like she can't amplify it after being flawless blocked. But what does matter is it says her up low kick amplified when flawless blocked has 10 less frames of block advantage and less pushback. So if, as you can see here, normally it says block advantage is 0. I'm not sure if that's even accurate. I thought it was like -3. Right, as you can see here, it says it's -4 if they just straight up block it. As you can see in the frame data, -4. It says here 0, but I don't think that's accurate. But yeah, if the opponent flawless blocks it, however, now it's going to be -10 after a flawless block. So as you can see here, it's flawless blocked. It says -14 actually, so that's probably not even accurate. So -14 it says if you flawless block it, and why this matters is mainly because of her 1-1-1 string. Her 1-1-1 is an auto shimmy, which can catch people trying to tech a throw when you're not actually trying to throw them, and then you can get a full combo because of it when you hit confirm it into the shots on hit. But the string itself, as you can see here, it's -8 on block. So anyone with a 7-frame jab can get a full combo punish. So this is why what Cassie players would have to do before is they would do 1-1-1, and if it's blocked, then they would go into the up low kick, and then they would amplify, and then they would be safe. But now she doesn't have that option anymore. She could also do it off of this, because there's a little bit of a mix-up whether or not she would go for that, or whether or not she would go for the kick, for the crushing blow, and then you could duck the kick. So now it's a risk for her to do that, since it can be flawless block and punish. Obviously, not everyone's going to be flawless block and punishing it, because it's not super easy to do for everyone, but at a high level, I'm sure people are going to be doing that pretty consistently now. So definitely not a safe option anymore for Cassie to just throw this out there. So she's going to have to be a little bit more careful when it comes to using that move. Other than that, there wasn't really anything. Oh, there was one more actual nerf, which is her forward 4. Her forward 4, let me take off the flawless block. Her forward 4 is -3 now on block. It used to be 0. So it used to be a 0 on block, 9-frame mid. Now it's a -3 on block, 9-frame mid. So it's still really good. You can still use it to stagger people, and it still has it's still a 9-frame mid, which is really good. You can still hit confirm it into a full combo. You can still stagger with it and have pushback, but now it's not as oppressive because it's not 0 on block anymore. So just something to make note of. Her forward 4 is slightly toned down, as I kind of expected they would do. So that's the change as well to Cassie. So just going over all the changes is 5% less health in general. Her forward 4 is now -3 on block. Her up glow kick now has a flawless blockable gap in it that she can get punished for using it now, and her nut punch or ball buster doesn't have the low profiling abilities that it used to as well. But overall, those were the only real changes. Some of the other changes is just visual effects that happened for some of her other moves, but there's no real point in discussing that because it doesn't really add to the gameplay. So those are the changes to Cassie. Overall, she's still going to be a very strong character, but now she's definitely a more honest character than she used to be. And that's going to be the end of this video breakdown for both Noob Saibot and Cassie Cage. Hopefully you guys learned a couple stuff, and thank you guys for watching the video. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.